Okay, so how do we assess? Instead of chasing the gizmos to try to detect AI use, I want to recommend that we adjust the process.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Welcome back to episode 7 in our AI mini-series. We have plowed through a lot of materials in the first 6 episodes, so be sure to check those out if you haven't already. As I do each time, let me remind you to visit our website, teachereditionpodcast.com, to learn more about our show, also to sign up for the newsletter, and please submit questions that we can use in our upcoming episodes. We are also Teacher Edition Pod on Instagram and TikTok, as well as Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. We are on YouTube as Teacher Edition Podcast. There are many ways to catch these episodes, obviously, so go check them out. Also, while you're there, follow, like, and share them. So today we are talking about reimagining assessments. How do you assess when answers are so readily available and accessible? You know, AI is really forcing our hand to rethink this. So perhaps we can't assess like we've always assessed. As we look at ways to get a different result, we need to really go back to the basics of assessments. Think about it. Why do you assess? Probably your first response, maybe that popped in your mind, was that you're checking for knowledge, or maybe you're checking for understanding. Okay, that works. Maybe you said to measure progress. Okay, what about accountability? If I don't assess, they will not learn it. What about motivation? And then in comes the data element. You know, data isn't all that wrong. It's not bad. We definitely need that. And data can be very motivating to students and honestly to teachers alike. But should we be data-driven? And I know this is maybe a little bit of a sidetrack from our topic of today, but I think we as educators can easily land there. At some point, assessments kind of wander into the realm of being more of a punishment sometimes. It feels that way. I don't think we intend it to be that way, but sometimes it does, especially if they lack, connection or authenticity. Do we do all 50 long division problems because that is what we have always done? Maybe even as an adult, you've had to do something that you really felt seemed like busy work just so you could prove that you knew something or that you had done something you were asked to do. And well, we'll do it because that's what we're supposed to do. Those are not often our most stellar results or our most stellar work. And unfortunately, maybe some of you, like the students, have been tempted to try to kind of find a shortcut to do that work. I heard someone at a conference say we should grade for growth. And I thought that was a really great perspective. I am in no way saying that grades aren't needed or accountability or things like that. I'm just challenging us as educators to stop and think why we are assessing. Is it just because we need grades in the gradebook, because we have to have so many points by the end of the semester? Or is it because we really want to help those students grow? Secondly, is how we are assessing the most effective way to assess. AI is definitely putting this in the spotlight. You have probably heard it said that in these AI days, if you only use assessments that are all due on the same day, for all students, and they all should have the same right answer, you're really asking for issues. And I couldn't agree more. I think there is truth to that. Yes, there will be assessments like that, but that really shouldn't be all of our assessments. Okay, so how do we assess? Instead of chasing the gizmos to try to detect AI use, I want to recommend that we adjust the process. Eric Kurtz, and maybe you've seen some of his materials, he does a great job. He's kind of like an educational consultant. He helps out schools, especially in the area of technology. He said that instead of trying to unbake the cake each time as a student turns in a project or an assessment, and we try to figure out how did they get to this? How did they do this? Where did they get this from? Instead, we need to focus on getting to the process of it. We need to focus on the process of getting to the final product. We could do a whole session on AI detectors. Let me just talk about this for just a second. I'm going to park here because I want to add a word of caution about this. We would all like a tool that could look at student work and say, yes, this was done with AI, or no, the student did this. Of course, that would save us hours of investigating on our part. It would save those awkward conversations and such. But unfortunately, there is not such a tool. Yes, there are AI detectors out there, but let me just say, please use them with great caution. Many major organizations have already gotten rid of their detectors. I mean, these are the organizations that create the detectors. They've already gotten rid of them because AI is improving every single day. And honestly, AI can create things that sound just like your students. And of course, as students, they are working to humanize their work, and that is an official term. They can tell what type of student they are, how many, errors, what type of errors they usually make, what their writing style is, what kind of grades they usually get. And with all that, the detectors are just not reliable. Now, I know many schools who do use them, but just let me encourage you to use them alongside other indicators as well, not just as your single source. Okay, let's look at some guidelines for navigating, assessing in this, I guess we'll just call it an AI age. What can we do? How can we make AI resistant assessments? How can we help our students be successful? Now, again, I could spend episode after episode after episode digging into how to create these assessments, how to write questions, examples of different things. I'm going to stay super high level and just give you some recommendations to help get you thinking as you navigate this. And again, every one of you is in a different situation between different grades and different subjects at different schools. You're going to have to decide how this looks at your school. So this all starts with our knowledge. Be knowledgeable. That is my first recommendation. My second recommendation is teach and model responsible use. Sometimes I think we think, well, if we don't talk about it, it won't exist, right? And we do that sometimes in Christian schools. I teach some different sessions on how to cheat with technology so that obviously educators can be knowledgeable. And often, I'll ask them, do you talk about cheating in your classes? No, because I don't want to draw attention to it, or I don't want to give them the idea. Well, you know what? That doesn't stop it. We need to focus on how to approach these topics with our students. And we can do that by teaching them directly about AI and its usage, its appropriate use, but also modeling it ourselves. We need to help shift their usage from those complete answers, because this is how they were introduced to it, right? To becoming their creative assistant, to becoming their tutor, their support in this. So what do we need to teach them? We need to teach them about bias. We need to teach them about misinformation. We've already covered that in these sessions. Teach that to your students in an age-appropriate way. We need to teach them what the appropriate use of AI is. Give them examples. Show them how to use it. Often, again, when their friend has showed them how to cheat with it, they are in no way thinking, oh, I wonder how I could use this appropriately to study. That's not typically there because that's not how it was introduced to them. So showing them ideas, providing them the correct tools can be a game changer for them. Also, I want to recommend that you define cheating in your setting. This looks different in every classroom, every different school, even though you may have broad overarching, policies for this. What is permitted? What is prohibited in your classroom, in your setting? What additional guidelines do you have for that? This is a graphic, an image, I guess, a graphic that Matt Miller put together. Maybe some of you are familiar with him. He is definitely a well-known name in education. He's put out many books. He has a great website, a lot dealing with technology. He's back in the classroom now, and that brings some new insights as well. But he put this out. I thought it was really helpful, so I want to share it with you. Rethinking what is cheating in your classroom. And really up to this point, often it was, if you look at somebody else's test, you are cheating. If you look up an answer to a homework problem or you use a calculator when you're not supposed to, that is cheating. Well, now the internet added an element because now they don't have to, retype a whole book in order to plagiarize. They can actually copy and paste and things like that. Now AI is adding this whole other element. So look at this continuum here. So at the top, the student plugs in the prompt into AI, copies the response, and submits it to the teacher. All the way down to the bottom, the student wrote all the assignment content without consulting AI or the internet. I am not here to say that any of those levels is right or wrong. I'm saying that in your classroom, you need to define what is appropriate. And honestly, that may change between assignments. So you're going to tell them, for this project or this assignment, this is how you can use AI, or you should not be using AI at all. Regardless of what you choose, communicate it to them. so they can know what's expected and then they can fall within those guidelines. They can make those choices. Another thing you can do, and this is something that Eric Kurtz focuses on, is what is permitted use, what is prohibited use, and what are other guidelines. So permitted might be for brainstorming or for studying for a test, like practicing. Prohibited use might be to complete your assignment. Other guidelines, a number of schools have gone to including like a statement on any projects that says, I did or did not use AI, if I did, how I used it. And some of them even have them print out and attach, what was their prompt and their answers so they can see that, yeah, they may use it for research, but this is how they brought that into the project itself. Whatever you decide, just be very clear about it and communicate that so they know how to fall within those standards. Now, in all of this, we do not want to lose any of those foundational elements. So as we create AI-resistant assessments or work towards doing that, I think this is going to be a process that's ongoing for a very long time. We want to make sure we maintain rigor. We don't want to shift into assessments that are going to, if you want to use the term, dumb down our assessments. We also want to make sure we're still aligning to our standards and that we're covering the correct content. Sometimes we can get far afield in our assessments. We're not assessing the right thing, or we miss out on objectives or standards. We want to make sure that all of that is met. So while that will not change, we want to change how they demonstrate and how they apply their knowledge. That's where this is going to look different. So here are some guidelines that maybe you can use to follow. Okay, here is our standard at the bottom, our foundation, maintaining rigor, aligning the standards, and covering the same content. Now, here are some general things, some general guidelines that will make it a little bit harder for the student to get the answers or get this project from AI. One, make the assessment original or make it very unique to the student. So it's something where they're bringing in an opinion or an experience, something they have experienced in class or personally, something they did as a group. Bringing that unique and original element is going to definitely make it a little bit harder to go to an AI bot or wherever they're going to get those answers. Include a personal connection. So even if it's a research topic, maybe they're going to give an opinion at the end, or they're going to indicate how they got to this point in the process, or how they're going to show their work, right? We've always done that, so they don't just go get the answer. Well, now they're showing their work. They're bringing in that personal element, whether it is experience or opinions or things like that along the way. The third one is have meaning and purpose. They can write a paragraph about why something happens in science, or they can create a video demonstrating that. You can, and maybe for a cause, maybe for something that they are passionate about. So you're bringing in that meaning and that purpose. And honestly, it's kind of taking away some of that motivation of like, I don't know what this has to do with anything. And maybe they're good kids and they'll do it because you ask them to, because they know it's right, but their heart's not in it. They're not really connected to that. There's not a lot of authenticity there. And I know we can't have that in everything we do. I'm not saying that, but where can we bring this in? Where can we give them that opportunity to research something they are interested in, bring in that personal element and have a purpose to that? So those are kind of some general policies or guidelines. Here's some specific applications. So you say, okay, those are all great, but how do I make this happen in a classroom? Some things to consider. You could have an assessment or assessments that are multi-step. Okay, so back to that statement about if everybody's homework is due on the same day, same time, with the same answers, yeah, we're just asking for them to go get that somewhere, like look it up or talk to someone else. But when we are checking it along the way, so if you say you have a 3-page paper due in 2 weeks and then you never work with those students, and you may say, who does that? That happens. It does happen. We give them a deadline. We remind them of the deadlines and what they're supposed to be doing. We maybe even verbally, how far are you? We check in, but we're not seeing their work along the way. So adding those multi-steps, those check-ins, also including a flipped classroom format. Now, again, you might not be able to do this all the time. That's fine. But for those who may not be familiar with flipped classroom, it's where they're getting the instruction at home. So maybe you create a video or you share a video with them or something that they read. They're doing the instruction part at home. Then in class time, they're doing the assessment part. So you're there, and there are a lot of pros to that. So you are working with them, you're answering their questions, you are right there with them when you can't be with them in their homes while they're doing this. But it also does give that other layer of accountability as they're doing that in your class. Utilizing collaborative documents from a teacher. So if you're having them write something, maybe you are going to create that and share that link with them. So you're going to have access into that document. You're seeing that being built. There's a level of accountability. I've been in some schools where they have shared out the document, but then all of a sudden, a student pastes in the whole paper. They use the document, but they brought that information in from another source and said, well, I like to type in Word and then I just move it into Google Docs. It's really coming to the point you're going to have to require that they use the document that you give them to build the entire assessment. That copying in, then it's out of that loop of accountability there. Are your assessments AI tested? If you're going to give an assessment, go to AI and type it in as you would, as maybe a student would, and see what they are seeing. And that might help you think, okay, this is how I can regroup, how I can recreate this to be a little more resistant there. Are your assessments creative? Do they have a creation base to them? Meaning where the students are building something, they are creating a video, they are creating a poster, an image, something multimedia is there. And again, these are those top levels of blooms, right? Evaluating, analyzing, creating. And often we just stay right down here. This is a great opportunity to push this up higher. Of course, always maintaining the rigor, the standards, and the content. Also, include an accompanying personal element. So maybe an audio explanation. So we've seen these great posters come in, but the student really doesn't have any idea what's on them. And maybe in the younger grades, you might have an inkling that mom or dad did that, maybe in the upper grades as well. But with the prevalence of AI and being able to get these answers, create graphics, bulleted lists, all this, that can now be created for them and all they have to glue it up. So maybe add an element where they explain their project or how they came to this conclusion, how they work through the process, and then they, attach a QR code or give you a link where you can hear that explanation if you can't actually do it live with them. So these are things you can be thinking as you're doing this. And I know maybe you've had the same thought that I have is we should not have to go back and redo all of our assessments to make them AI resistant. We should have students with the integrity to do what's right. I couldn't agree more. And we don't want to lose that element. We don't want to be so busy padding everything we do so there's no way they can cheat. And you know what? Those who are going to cheat are going to do it no matter what work you pour into it. And that's an issue with the heart. There's some type of struggle there. There's some kind of pressure. There's something going on, and we need to address that and work with them because that's always going to be there. But I understand your concern of I shouldn't have to put bubble wrap around everything. There also needs to be a character element. And I couldn't agree more. We do need to teach them good character. We cannot do this for every assessment. They will have opportunities where they need to make right choices. And we need to guide their hearts, to guide their decisions, to choose what is right. I am all for that. But in ways, sometimes we hand them assessment that is just way too easy to make a wrong choice. And if there is a way we can help them make a right choice, make it more authentic, give them those creation elements, making them unique to the student. And then in that, baked in is that element where there's a little AI resistance. That's going to be a plus for them as we assess what they know. Okay, so back to those general expectations. Be knowledgeable, model the right use. Also have a policy and a plan. So you are laying out the expectations for your class, for your school. We talked about the cheating expectations. And you know what? There's no easy answer on this. We are all working through this. As this hits education, I can't tell you, I was just in a school this past week, oh yeah, we really need to come up with a policy. Everyone is working through this at the same time. Be careful to follow age restrictions. This is a legal matter, and we want to be really careful of that. You say, it doesn't matter. Let everybody look this up. You need to be careful because you're modeling before them the right use of these tools. Be unified in the awareness of AI misuse. Talk with your team. Maybe it's by department. Maybe it's your whole school. How are you going to handle this? What can teachers be looking for in student work? The kind of those neon lights that might indicate misuse. Now, we already talked about those detectors. By the way, in many of the studies I've read, I mean, there's large numbers of studies on inaccuracies of these, anywhere from 55% to 97% inaccurate. I have watched student work be fed in. I have watched AI work be fed in, and the results are all over the place. I've even watched them feed in parts of the Bible and see what the results are there. You know, OpenAI shut down their detector because AI is so good. Their detector was ineffective. Also, there's a growing need or a growing concern in student mental health. I was watching a short documentary of students who are so concerned about their work getting a false positive that they used AI when they didn't, that they're actually recording themselves every night doing their homework, setting their phone up and recording as they do their homework as proof that they did not use AI. Again, we have to be really careful that we're not putting the wrong kind of pressure on students. We want them to do well. We want to be above reproach and choose to do what's right. But when we're using these tools and we're already on edge and we're trying to figure out, did AI do this? We have to be really, really careful in how we approach that. I mentioned if you want to use an AI detector, use something else with it. And in general, that's just a really good policy. Here is a list that I actually got from Tech and Learning. And you can see if you get work that's overproduced, like you asked for 3 sentences and you got 3 paragraphs, you think, wow, what an overachiever. Well, maybe they just got a little extra from AI, something that really misses the mark of what you are wanting. It lacks emotion, okay? Because again, there's not that personal connection when you're copying it from AI. An overuse of cliches. It's submitted early and you think, wow, you really worked ahead. Well, it has a setting that's kind of out of time. It's kind of, it feels misplaced. It's not really landed. It has a large number of lists or bullet points. We know tools like ChatGPT loves to do those lists. I saw one, where it even still had the emoticons in there, kind of gives it away a little bit. It's something that is completely free of mistakes. It's just a little too perfect. It really stands out from, the typical student work. It lacks citations, quotations, but there's some pretty amazing work in there. And then maybe there's just other red flag words like moreover or consequently. And I think there are very few of our students who would use terminology like that. And honestly, you're a teacher. And when you look at something and you say, this just doesn't seem right, you have that teacher sense. And if you're a teacher who has taken samples of your student work, you're going to know, like, this is not typical work for that student. And it sticks out to you. It's a red flag. Those are things used in combination, of these items, maybe even with a detector, that just brings up the open possibility for a discussion with that student of, hey, I'm concerned, this doesn't seem like you're writing, or can you tell me more about how you got to this, how you created this, how you worked on this? Those are things that bring up a great conversation. We don't want to just come right out and accuse them. It's going to be pretty rare that you have that clear cut. Maybe, there are probably those times, but sharing your concern and then talking about where you're getting that concern, like what is different, how it's different, giving them those specifics other than this doesn't seem like you're writing. Did you copy and paste this from something? When we get really direct with them, we want to use this opportunity to mentor them and reach them and come alongside. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. There definitely should be. There need to be those hard conversations, even awkward at times. But just thinking through, as we're so much on the defensive as educators against this AI trend that we're seeing, we want to make sure we approach it in a Christ-like way. Okay, so back to our list. We're following age restrictions. We're unified in our awareness of misuse. So, having things that we look at together as a school as kind of those bright lights. We want to verify any AI-generated content. I mentioned this earlier. Number of schools are going to just at the bottom of assignments or maybe added on to assignment. They indicate if they used AI, and if they did, how did they, and maybe even they include what their prompt was and how they used it. Be very clear and transparent. What are your expectations, how it can be used, and what will happen if you do abuse that or misuse those tools. And then lastly, I want to really encourage you to engage parents and guardians. So they are working through this too. Let them know what tools are out there. Those can be on their radar as well. Know what guidelines are in place for your class so they can also help to reinforce that at home. Also, if there is an issue that comes up, they're already aware of the expectation and how this might have come about. Also, getting their permission. So if you are within an age range where they can use that tool, making sure you have worked with them to get the appropriate permission for their students to use that. So again, this is not sitting down and going over every one of your assessments and how can we fix this. Not even saying that you should do this for all of your assessments, but just giving you some high-level guidelines that might help you start thinking about how you can strengthen this at your school. Assessments are a huge topic, and this type of discussion just barely scratches that surface. But hopefully, you're walking away with something to think about. And this is at all ages. Yes, even down into the lower elementary. Let's set our students up for success. Of course, we want them to make right choices, but let's also look at how we can create top-notch assessments, not just so that they can't find a way to cheat, because as I said, some of them still will, but so that we can best learn what they know, so they can best show that to us, and then we can help them to grow from what we learned from them. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for walking through this topic. I hope you're walking away with some thought-provoking items that you can take back and apply in your classrooms. I'm really looking forward to our next and final episode in this mini-series where we're going to talk about being AI ready. As we sign off for today, just a reminder, go to teachereditionpodcast.com to learn more about the show and to submit questions for our upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now, it's time to get back to your day. But once again, it's not just any day, because every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now go do what God has called you to do.